your review questions. So make sure you double check your reading RTI to see if you are your RTI, because I have received assignments from 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 4 missing assignments, and this 9 weeks just started. So FYI. All right, Paisley, tell me where we ended in chapter 4. What's happening? Unmute yourself and tell me what's happening, Paisley.
He left the shed.
Okay, what else? He didn't just leave the shed. What's he doing? Chilling on the ground? No.
He is gonna leave the Amos house.
Yeah, so he's already on the land, remember? It means on the run. That's what that means. So he's already rolling out. Remember, he poured the water all over Todd's bed and stuff. Haha. To get back at him. He busted out of the shed, but he was stung by hornets first. All this crazy stuff. So far, we are only 35 pages in, and this kid has like the worst life so far. But he's on the lam. And I love some of your guys' predictions in your questions if you did that assignment on where you thought he was going to go next. Some of you thought he was just going to keep on going. Some of you thought he was going to go back to the foster home or the group home. Some of you thought he was going to go find his dad. Like, you guys had some really good predictions. Go you. We're going to start chapter 5. And remember, you should be naming the chapter titles as we finish each chapter. Don't forget that. Being on the lam was a whole lot of fun for about 5 minutes. Every time my heart beat, I could feel the blood pushing hot and hard on the inside of my sting spots and the bite on my hand. But I couldn't let that slow me down. I had to get out of this neighborhood as quick as I could. All right, so he's probably not feeling very good because he literally was just stung by a ton of hornets. And remember, he got his hand stuck in that one dead fish, so he has that weird bite on his hand. Like, he's probably not feeling too great, and now he's walking in the middle of the night. I knew a nervous-looking, stung-up kid with blood dripping from a fish head bite and carrying an old, raggedy suitcase didn't look like he belonged around here. The only hope I had was the North Side Library. If I got there, maybe Miss Hill would be able to help me. Maybe she'd understand and would be able to tell me what to do. And for now, I could sneak into the library's basement to sleep. All right, so we know where he's going. Right now, he's heading to a library. That's on the north side, and apparently he's been there before because he knows this person named Miss Hill. It was a lot better. It was a lot later than I'd ever been up before, and I was kind of scared of cops catching me. I had to be in the middle of the night, even if I were crouching down, sneaking along the street like pretty boy Floyd. At the library, I walked past a giant row of Christmas trees that were planted on the side of the building. There was a door on the side with the light burning above it, so I kept walking in the shadows made by the big trees. When I got to the back windows, I almost busted out crying. Somebody had gone and put big metal bars on the windows. Even though I knew it was useless, I tried tugging at the bars, but they were made of real McCoy solid steel. I headed back to the Christmas trees. They were low enough to the ground that no one could see me unless they were really looking. So I started opening my suitcase. Most folks don't have enough sense to carry a blanket with them, but you never know when you might be sleeping under a Christmas tree at the library, so I always keep mine handy. So there's a little bit of humor there in Bud's life. Obviously, that doesn't happen to many people. How many of you have slept underneath a Christmas tree at a library? Probably none of you. That's an odd thing to do, but he's like, don't worry, I got a blanket handy. So he thought he was going to be able to go in the library, sneak in the window, but he couldn't. So now he's going to sleep underneath some trees, apparently. I untied the strange knot that the Amoses had put in my twine and opened the suitcase. I could tell right away that someone had been fumbling through my things. Can someone tell me what fumbling through means? If I'm fumbling through your things, what does that mean? Olivia.
Like going through his things.
Yeah, someone had went through his things, but he used the word fumbling. First off, where I put the blanket in, I always fold it so that it stops all the other things from banging up against each other. But those doggone Amoses just stuffed it in here without paying no mind to what it was mashing up. I lifted the blanket out and saw that everything else was still there. You might be able to say that the Amoses were some mean old nasty folks, but you couldn't call them thieves. I picked up the old tobacco bag that I kept my rocks in. I could tell by the drawstring was pulled that the Amoses had been poking through this too. I jiggled it up and down in my hands a couple times, and it felt like none of the rocks were missing, but I opened it and counted them anyways. None of them were gone. Next, I pulled Mama's picture out of the envelope I kept it in and held it so the light from the library's side door would shine down on it. I looked It looked like the Amoses hadn't heard it. This was the only picture of Mama in the world. Running across the top of it was a sign that had writ on a long, skinny flag. It said, "Boys and girls, follow the gentle light to the Miss B. Gotten Moon Park." Underneath the sign, between two big wagon wheels, was Mama. She was about as old as I am now and was looking down and frowning. I couldn't understand why she was so unhappy. This park looked like the kind of place where you could have a lot of fun. So we just found out a few more things about what's in his suitcase. So we know there's a blanket in his suitcase. There's a tobacco pouch, like an old tobacco pouch full of rocks. Okay, check. We know there's some flyers in there, and there's also a picture of his mother. So now we know even more things that are inside this suitcase of his. So far, like no clothes, that normal suitcase stuff, just blanket, rocks, flyers, and a picture. That's what we know of so far. In the picture, Mama was sitting on a real live little midget horse. It looked tired and dragged out like those big war horses do, but it had a teeny tiny body with a big sag where most horses have a straight back. So that means horses would be like this, but his back was like this. Got a big old dip in his back, probably because he's been sat on too much in his life. Mama was sitting right in the middle of the horse's back, riding him side saddle, except there wasn't any saddle. So I guess you have to say she was riding him side saddle. She had two six-shooter pistols in her hands, and the way her face looked, you could tell she wished she could have emptied them on someone. And I know who that somebody was. Mama told me it was her father, my granddad. He'd gone and ruined everybody's fun that day by getting in a big fight with my mother about the gigantic white 25-gallon Texas cowboy hat that she was wearing. Mom used to tell me that hard-headed man insisted, mind you, that I wear that horrible hat. That hat was almost as big as Mama, and you could see it was fake because as tall as it was, no real cowboy could have worn it without it getting knocked off his head every time he rode under a tree or some telephone wires or telegraph wires. Mama told me that some man used to drag that midget horse all through her neighborhood with a camera. And if your Mama and Daddy signed a piece of paper that he'd take some pictures of you, then come back in a couple weeks so you could buy them. Mama wasn't looking like she had rocks in her jaw because that hat was so fake that a real cowboy would have laughed you out of town for wearing it. She was mad because the hat was so dirty. When she used to tell me about it, her eyes used to get big and Bernie, like the whole thing happened the day before yesterday instead of all those years ago. She'd start moving around our apartment real quick, picking things up and putting them back in the exact same spot. Filth, she'd say about that hat. Absolute filth. Why the thing was positively alive with germs. Who knows what type of people had worn it? I'd say, I don't know, Mama. She'd say, who knows how many years it had been worn by how many of those sweaty little heads? I'd say, I don't know, Mama. She'd say the entire band on the inside was black, and I'm sure it was crawling with wingworm, lice, and teeters. I'd say, yes, Mama. She'd say, and that horrible little photographer didn't care. Do you imagine it even occurred to him to wash it? I'd say, no, Mama. She'd say, of course not. We meant less to him than that horse he mistreated, so I'd say, yes, Mama. She'd say, but your grandfather insisted. To this day, I cannot understand why he insisted. I'd say, yes, Mama. We'd had that conversation a lot of times. All right, so there's just a little dialogue between Bud and his mom back in the day about this hat. So this picture is going to play a big role in our lives. We're going to hear about this picture throughout the story. All right, sorry, I was looking at my computer for an email. Anyways, what was I saying? I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, the picture. So the mom is on this horse with this big hat that she hated wearing. Anyways, that's just a little bit, like you can see his mama's personality, how she's like talking real quick and she's like kind of answering her own questions. And Bud, who, was only 6 when she died, is just like, and she's kind of agreeing with her. Me and Mama having the same conversations lots of times is one of the main things I can remember about her. Maybe that's because when she'd tell me these things, she used to squeeze my arm and look right hard in my face to make sure I was listening. But maybe I remember them because those arm squeezing, face looking times were the only times that things slowed down a little bit when Mama was around. Everything moved very, very fast when Mama was near. She was like a tornado, never resting, always looking around us, never standing still. The only time stuff didn't blow around when she was near was when she'd squeeze my arm and tell me things over and over and over and over. She had four favorite things to tell me. One of them was about the picture, and another was about my name. She'd say, Bud is your name. Don't ever let anyone call you anything outside of that either. She'd tell me, especially don't let anyone call you Buddy. I may have some problems, but being stupid isn't one of them. I would have added that DY on the end of your name if I intended for it to be there. I knew what I was doing. Buddy is a dog's name or a name that someone's going to use on you if you're being false friended. Your name is Bud, period. I'd say, okay, mama. So far in the story, we've already heard Bud say it's Bud, not Buddy, right? Many times. And he says that because his mom told him to say that. His mom said, your name is not Buddy, it is Bud. Now we're going to find out, hopefully, why his name is Bud and not Buddy. Besides the fact that she thinks it's a dog's name. And she'd say every single time, you know what a bud is? I'd always answer, yes, mama. But it was like she didn't hear me, and she'd tell me anyways. A bud is a flower to be, a flower in waiting, waiting for just the right warmth and care to open up. It's a little fist of love waiting to unfold and be seen by the world, and that's you. I'd say, yes, mama. I know she didn't mean by naming me after a flower, but it's sure not something I tell anybody about. Another thing that she'd tell me, don't worry, bud. As soon as you get to be a young man, I have a lot of things I'll explain to you. That didn't make me calm at all. That was Bud Caldwell's Rules and Things to Having a Funner Life and Making Better Liar Out of Yourself, number 83. By the way, many of you got that question wrong on chapter 3 and 4 questions because the entire book is called Bud Caldwell's Rules and Things to Having a Funner Life and Making a Better Liar Out of Yourself. Some of you guys just said rules and things, okay? It's that big, long title. So if you got that question wrong, that's why. Rules and Things, number 83. If an adult tells you not to worry, and you weren't worried before, you better hurry up and start because you're already running late. So he's saying that you should always be worrying if someone says don't worry, because why would you have been worrying in the first place? And oh my goodness. She'd tell me, these things I'm going to explain to you later will be a great help for you. Then Mama look hard in my face, grab a hold my arms real tight and say, and Bud, I want you always to remember, no matter how bad things look to you, no matter how dark the night, when one door closes, don't worry because another door opens. I'd say, what? It opens all by itself? Mama said, yes, it seems so. That was it. Another door opens. That was the thing that was supposed to have helped me. I should have known then that I was in for a lot of trouble. Raise your hand if you've heard that expression before, if like one door closes, another opens. Anyone ever heard that expression? Yeah. That's an idiom, like raining cats and dogs. Yep. Anyways, I've heard that a lot in times. So he's saying what? It opens all by itself? Because remember, he's 5 years old or 6 years old when he's having these conversations with his mom. So she's like, a door closes, another one opens, and he's like, all by itself. He's not understanding that it's like, a figure of speech saying that there's other opportunities even though one leaves. So he's like, what are you talking about? Are doors opening and closing? It's funny how now that I'm 10 years old and just about a man, I can see how Mama was so wrong. She was wrong because she probably should have told me how the things she thought I was too young to hear, because now she's gone and I'll never know what they were. Even if I was too young back then, I could have memorized them and used them when I did need them, like now. She was also wrong when she thought I'd understand that nonsense about doors closing and opening all by themselves. Back then, it really scared me because I couldn't see what one door closing had to do with another opening unless there was a ghost involved. All her talk made me start jamming a chair up against my closet door at night. So he's like, still not understanding why are doors opening and closing, but really it's just a figure of speech. But now that I'm almost grown, I see Mama wasn't talking about doors open to let ghosts in your bedroom. She meant doors like the doors at the home closing, leading to the doors at the Amos is open, and the door in the shed leading me to sleeping under a tree, getting ready to open the next door. I checked out the other things in my suitcase and they seemed okay. I felt a lot better. Right now, I was too tired to think anymore, so I closed my suitcase, put the proper knot back in the twine, crawled under the Christmas tree, and wrapped myself in the blanket. I'd have to wake up real early if I wanted to get to the mission in time for breakfast. If you were 1 minute late, they wouldn't let you in for food. All right. Before we continue, does anyone know what he's talking about when he says the mission? Anyone know what that is? Anyone? No? Paisley?
The mission is something that you're gonna go do.
That is a mission, but this is a different type of mission. This mission is a place. So we're about to continue. There's not that many pages, so we might be able to finish chapter 6 today. So he's asleep underneath the Christmas tree. Probably doesn't sound that very comfy because I don't know about you, but those pine needles probably pointy. All right, chapter 6. Uh-oh. My eyes opened and I could see the sun behind the branches of the Christmas tree. I jumped up, folded my blanket inside my suitcase, hid it, and started running the 6 or 7 blocks down to the mission. Under the corner, I turned the corner and said, "Whew!" There were still people lined up waiting. I started walking along the line. The end was a lot further away than I thought. The line turned all the way around 2 corners, then crossed over one street before I saw the last person. Shucks. I walked up to get behind him. He said, "Line's closed. These here folks are the last ones." He pointed to the man standing next to the woman who's carrying a baby. I said, "But sir," he said, "but nothing. Line's closed. These here folks are the last ones." It was time to start line. If I didn't get any food now, I'd have to steal something out of someone's garbage or I wouldn't be able to eat until the mission opened for supper. I said, "Sir, The man raised his hand and said, "Look, kid, everybody's got a store and everybody knows the rules. The line closes at 7 o'clock. How's it fair these people who've been here since 5 o'clock that you can sleep until," he looked at his wristwatch, "7:15, then come busting down here expecting to eat? You think you got some kind of special privilege just because you're skinny and raggedy? Look in the line. There's a lot of folks who look just like you. You ain't the worst. Supper starts at 6 p.m. You better see how things is. If you plan on getting fed, you better be in line by 4. Now get out of here before I get rough with you." Shucks. Being hungry a whole day is as bad as I can get. I said, "But," he reached in his pocket and pulled something out that looked like a heavy black strap and slapped it across his hand. Uh-oh. Here we go again. All right, so a mission in this situation is like a food pantry or like a soup kitchen. So if you didn't have money to eat, you could go get in this line and you could get food for free. But apparently the line closes at 7. It's 7:15, so he's about to not get food, okay? Because this man's about to like beat him if he doesn't leave. He said, "That's it. No more talk. You open your mouth one too many times. You rotten kids today don't listen to no one. But I'm going to show you something that'll improve your hearing." He slapped the strap on his hand and started walking towards me. I was wrong when I said being hungry for a day is about as bad as it can get. Being hungry plus having a big knot on your head from a black leather strap, that would be even worse. Also, remember, this is in the 1930s, so apparently you can just like beat kids on the street and it's totally fine. Okay, so that's what, obviously today we can't do that, but I backed away, but only got 2 steps before I hit a giant warm hand wrapped around my neck from behind. I looked up to see those doggone hands were so doggone big, and why they'd put it around my neck. A very tall, square-shaped man in old blue overalls looked down at me and said, "Clarence, what took you so long?" I got ready to say, "My name's not Clarence, and please don't choke me, sir, I'll leave." But as soon as I opened my mouth, he gave my head a shake and said, "I told you to hurry back. Now where you been?" He gave me a shove and said, "Get back in line with your mama." I looked up and down the line to see who was supposed to be my mama when the woman pointed her finger at her feet and said, "Clarence, you get over here right now." There were 2 little kids hanging on to her skirt. I walked over to where she was, and she gave me a good hard smack on my head. Shucks, for someone who was just pretending to be my mama, she sure did slap me a good one. I said, "Ow." The big square man who'd grabbed my neck looked at the man with the strap and said, "Boy had to go use the crapper. Told him not to waste time, but like you said, these kids don't listen to nobody." The strap man looked at the size of the man who called me Clarence and walked back to the end of the line. When the overall man got out of the line, I said, "Thank you, sir. I really tried to get it, but he popped me in the back of the head hard and said, 'Next time, don't be gone so long.'" The 2 little kids busted out laughing, saying, "Na, na, 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 na. Clarence got a licking. Clarence got a licking." I told them, "Shut up and don't call me." You can just leave it. I'll put it away. "And don't call me Then both my pretend papa and pretend mama smacked me on the head. She looked at the people directly behind us and said, "Mercy, when they get to be this age," the people weren't too happy about me taking cuts in lines, but when they looked at how big my pretend daddy was, they saw how hard him and my pretend mama were going upside my head. They decided they wouldn't say anything. I was just grateful for these people. I wish they quit knocking me in the head, and it seemed like with all the names in the world, they could have come up with a better one for me than Clarence. So someone explain to me what happened here. So he was late for the line, and then this giant man was like, "Clarence, get in line with your mom." So someone tell me what actually went down. Someone besides Paisley, because I've already heard Paisley talk today. Someone explain to me what actually happened here. Because his name is not Clarence, right? And he doesn't have a dad that we know of. He's MIA, and he clearly doesn't have a mom because his mom is dead. So what happened? Sure, you can say in the chat, but that's going to take a while. Yeah, they lied to get him into the line. So they're pretending to be his parents. So this nice family saw that he was about to get in trouble by this guy, and they saw that like he clearly needed food. He's probably looking real rough. Remember, he's covered in hornet stings and things like that. So they are pretending to be his family. That way he can get in line and he can eat. So go this nice family, but they named him Clarence for whatever reason. That's the name that came to their head. I stood in line with my pretend family for a long, long time. Everybody was very quiet about standing in line, even my pretend brother and sister and all the other kids. When we finally got around the last corner and could see the door, the folks going in seemed like a bubble burst, and people started laughing and talking. The main thing people were talking about was the great big sign that was hanging over the building. It showed a gigantic picture of a family of 4 rich white people sitting in a car driving somewhere. You could tell it was a family because they all looked exactly alike. The only difference amongst them was that the daddy had a big head and a hat, and the mama had the same head with a woman's hat, and the little girl had 2 big yellow pigtails coming out from above her ears. They all had big shiny teeth and big shiny eyes and big shiny cheeks and big shiny smiles. Shucks. You'd need to squint your eyes if a shiny family drove anywhere near you. You could tell that they were rich because the car looked like they had room for 8 or 9 people in it, and because they had movie star clothes on. The woman was wearing a coat with a hunk of fur around the neck, and the man was wearing a suit and a tie, and the kids looked like they were wearing $10 a piece jackets. Remember, this is the 1930s during the Depression. People definitely didn't have money to be spending $10 on a jacket. So they're just looking at this sign saying these people look rich, they have a huge car, they look really nice. Writ above the car in fancy letters said, "There's no place like America today." My pretend daddy read it and said, Well, you got to give them credit. You wouldn't expect that they'd have the nerve to come down here and tell you the truth. When we finally got into the building, it was worth the wait. The first thing you noticed when you got inside was how big the place was and how many people were in it and how quiet it was. The only sound you could hear was some scrapes a spoon across the bottom of their bowl or pulled the chair in or put one back, or when the people in front of you dragged their feet on the floor, moving up to where they were spooning out the food. After we picked up our spoons and bowls, a lady dug a big mess of oatmeal out of a giant pot, swapped it down in your bowl. She smiled. "I hope you enjoy." Me and my pretend family all said, "Thank you, ma'am." Then a man put 2 pieces of bread and an apple and a big glass of milk on your tray and said, "Please read the sign to your children. Thank you." We all said, "Thank you, sir." Then we walked past some signs someone stuck on the wall. One said, "Please do not smoke." Another said, "Please eat as quickly and quietly as possible." Another one said, "Please be considerate and patient. Clean up after yourself. Your neighbors will be eating after you." And the last one said, "We are terribly sorry, but we have no work available." My pretend daddy read the signs to my pretend brother and sister, and we all sat at a long table with strangers on both sides of us. The oatmeal was delicious. I poured some of my milk into it so it wouldn't be so lumpy and mixed it all together. My pretend mother opened her pocketbook and took out a little brown envelope. She reached inside of it and sprinkled something on my pretend brother and sister's oatmeal. Then she said to them, "I know it's not as much as you normally get, but I wanted to ask you if you minded sharing some with Clarence." They pouted and gave me a couple dirty looks. My pretend mother said, "Good," and emptied the rest of her envelope over my oatmeal. Brown sugar. Shucks. I didn't even mind them calling me Clarence anymore. I said, "Thank you, Mama, ma'am." She and my pretend daddy laughed, and he said, "It took you long enough to catch on, Clarence." He acted like he was going to smack me again, but he didn't. After we'd finished all of our food, we put our bowls up and thanked my pretend family again. I asked them, "Are you coming back for supper?" Pretend mama said, "No, dear. We only come here mornings, but you make sure to get here plenty early. You hear?" I said, "Yes, ma'am. Ma'am." I watched them walking away. My pretend brother looked back at me and stuck out his tongue, then reached up and took my pretend mama's hands. I couldn't really blame him. I don't think I'd be real happy about sharing my brown sugar and my folks with a strange kid either. Okay, so luckily he got a meal thanks to this awesome family, and he got brown sugar, which apparently is a big, big treat. Brown sugar is really tasty. I don't know if you ever had it. If your parents are ever bake, you probably had it. All right, so we finished chapter 5 and chapter 6. Your homework is to just label those chapters. Anytime you have to, any chance you have today, you need to make sure to hop on to Reading RTI Google Classroom, go to that assignment, make sure you labels chapter 5 and 6. This recording will be posted. I will see you guys later in reading class. So long, so long. You may leave me now. Goodbye, goodbye, goodbye. Yeah, see?